Good day, everyone, and thank you very much for watching our video on how to apply for the Additional Dwelling Units Grant of the Housing Accelerator Fund. My name is Darrik, and I'm one of the Housing Accelerator Coordinators with the City of Thunder Bay. My role is coordinating the grant application process for the Housing Community Improvement Plan and the Construction Assistance Grant of the Strategic Core Areas Community Improvement Plan. The goal of this video is to help you understand what funding is available for property owners who want to add additional dwelling units or ADUs to their property. So let's start off with answering a very important question, and that's what is an ADU? So an ADU is any self-contained apartment, backyard home, or small residential unit located on the same property as another existing residential or mixed use building, such as an existing single detached home. And a very important part of that definition is that whole self-contained part. Self-contained means this new unit has to be totally separate as a home. So think of what you need to do to live in your home. You need to be able to enter and exit privately, prepare your meals, wash your dishes, bathe, go to the washroom, all that kind of stuff. And the same is true for an ADU. Your project will need to meet the Ontario Building Code for it to be eligible, and that's all taken care of as part of that process. So now that we know what it is, why would you consider building an ADU? So adding an ADU can help family members live nearby, generate some rental income to offset your costs, and it increases the housing options available to everyone in the city of Thunder Bay. So there is funding available to help offset construction costs, and the application window is open now. Applications are being accepted until April 17th, and we want to make sure your application is complete and accurate so you don't miss out on funding. So why is the funding available? Like many other cities across Canada, Thunder Bay is also in a housing shortage. So to work towards addressing that shortage, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, or the CMHC, announced the Housing Accelerator Program in 2023. And the City of Thunder Bay successfully applied to the Housing Accelerator Fund and was granted up to $20.7 million to support housing options. The Additional Dwelling Units Grant is a part of that effort. And as a property owner, when you add another unit to your existing property, you're helping create what is known as gentle density. And gentle density is what happens when more housing is added without huge changes to the look and feel of a neighborhood, or needing to add more city infrastructure like new roads, new sidewalks, new water and sewer lines. All of these things increase our operating costs as a municipality and can drive up the taxes. So we designed the ADU grant to help you out with that. So what type of an ADU can you build? The grant supports all three of the main types of additional dwelling units. And that's the easiest way to think about that is the units that are built in, on, or around your existing home. So for in, think about like a basement apartment in an existing building. On would be adding an addition that increases the size of your home, or around is a separate building on your property, like a backyard home. So now that we know all about additional dwelling units, let's talk about the money. The ADU grant is the major grant, the one you will be filling out the application for. It's worth up to $20,000 per new unit that you create. So a tip here is that a new unit is how many you are adding. So if you have a house and you're adding a basement apartment to it, you're adding only one unit, even though you'll have two units at the end. Your house is already a unit. So keep that in mind when you move through the application process. There are also two grants that you can apply for within the ADU application. The Planning and Building Permit Fees Grant provides up to $10,000 towards your building permit fees and any planning application fees if your project needs a planning approval, such as a minor variance is a really good example of that. And lastly, the Servicing Grant provides up to $10,000 towards upgrades to your municipal water or sewer connections. Very important here is that this grant only covers these two services outside the walls of the property and does not apply to any other utilities like hydro or work inside of your building. So what expenses are eligible for the ADU grant and which aren't? Very common question. And a good way to think about eligible expenses are the things that you need to do or buy to build the unit that you couldn't or wouldn't reasonably take with you if you moved. So if you wouldn't take it with you when you moved, there's a really good chance that it'd be an eligible expense. So approved drawings and building plans, you can't build without them. So those would be eligible. Construction materials, you need those for sure to build stuff. So those would be eligible. A washer and a dryer. You could take those with you if you moved, so that would not be eligible. Flooring, drywall, cabinetry. I, I've never heard of anyone taking any of those things when they've moved, so those would probably be eligible as well. A microwave, a stove, dishwasher, stuff like that. People do take those sometimes, so those would not be eligible. Vanities, toilets, doors, showers, those are definitely going to stay behind, so those would be eligible as well. So just a note here too is that all grants are paid out upon completion of the project. So it's a cost recovery model. You have to cover the costs for doing your project up front. So once your project is complete, clears the final inspection, and your building permit's closed, you'll receive the funds for your eligible expenses. So now that we've covered the basics of the grant, let's dive into the process for actually applying for one. Now we're going to think about this in terms of phases. So the very first phase, phase one, is the before you apply phase. So the goal of this phase is to figure out your project and to validate your idea. So learning about the grants is a great place to start. And since you're watching this video, you're already doing that. So great job. You'll also want to see if you're in the eligible project area, and you can do this by using our interactive map, which you can find the link for on our Build Thunder Bay website. So the top picture in the slide is an example of what this map looks like. And to search for your property, you type your address in the search bar at the top. And just a quick note here, as you're typing, a little drop down with the full address will pop down on your screen. Click that. It'll zoom right into your property. And if the project property is inside the red or purple lines, you're good to go. If it isn't, you might not be eligible for a grant. So just a reminder that the goal here is building where the city has full urban services. So that's water and sewer. So if your property does have full urban services and doesn't show up here, just email buildthunderbay@thunderbay.ca and we can help you out with that. The next thing that you want to do is to use the ADU search tool, which is another interactive map. And this tool, it's primarily focused on whether or not you can build a backyard home, but it still provides a lot of really good information. So just like with the other map, you're going to have to click through a couple of menus and you'll see that there's a search bar. So search your address. If it pops down, give it a click, and then it'll zoom into where your project property is. And you'll notice that it'll be one of green, yellow, or red, like a stoplight. So if it's green, you're likely able to build any type of ADU because green means that you can build a backyard home. If it's yellow, you might only be able to build an additional dwelling unit in your home. So one of those in style of units, like a basement apartment. And if it's red, then you might not be able to build one. So if you turn up as red, a suggestion here is to follow up with one of our planners by emailing planning@thunderbay.ca, and they'll be able to tell you if your lot can support additional units or not. The next thing that you're going to want to do is confirm zoning and parking requirements. So once you have a good idea of the type of project that you'd like to do, the next step is to find out if your property can actually support that project. And the best way to do this is to talk to a planner from planning services, like we kind of talked about before. So they'll be able to tell you if your project meets all the requirements or if you need to do a planning application, such as a minor variance for like something like parking. This is a good time to also make sure that you meet any other requirements, like the number of parking spaces, typically one per unit. So you'll be looking at two if you're adding one unit type of a thing. But talking to a planner is a really good thing to do because they'll be able to help you understand what your lot can do. So the next phase, phase two, is actually submitting your application for review. So now that you have a good idea of what you want to do and you've done some homework, you're ready to submit an application. So to do that, you need to create an account through the online application portal. And after you have your account set up, you'll be ready to fill in and submit the application. We do have a guide available on our Build Thunder Bay website. It's a step-by-step guide of like what you need to click, what you need to enter into. It doesn't go through the entire application, but it's a really good resource to use to get you started, especially with selecting the right application types at the very beginning of the application process. So after you've got your account set up, you're ready to fill in and submit the application. So before you complete the application, you should gather the required documents and have them ready to attach. So you're going to need a proof of ownership that you are in fact the owner of the property. And that can be a copy of a current tax bill for the property, which clearly shows the names of the owner and the property address that you're applying for a grant. And if you've recently purchased a home, you can also use the transfer document as part of your purchase package, or you can get a document from the land registry office. You'll also want to attach a sketch of what you actually want to do. This does not need to be engineered drawings or design drawings at this stage. It's just an illustration of showing what you want to do. And this helps us verify the information in your application. And you can kind of see an example of that on the right-hand side of the slide. You'll also want some before pictures of the area that you want to put the new unit in, and these help us visualize the project identified in the application. And format does matter here, so it's preferred that you do upload JPEG photographs. And another really important part here is your project description. And this is where you want to tell us what you're looking to do with your project. So this will be right at the very beginning of your application. And the key here is to be specific, but we don't need a huge write-up, because this is the point where we just cross-reference against your actual application answers and that drawing or sketch that you're going to be providing. So like build a basement unit, that's not enough detail. Level the basement floor using super self leveler 2000 drywall with 5/8 inch thickness drywall. Add 1, 2, 3, 4 square foot kitchen with polylaminate counters and brushed nickel fixtures. Like that's way too much. You don't have to go into that amount of detail, but something like build a 2-bedroom basement apartment in my unfinished basement. Like that's great. Build a 1-bedroom basement apartment in my partially finished basement. Has an existing bedroom and bathroom. Need to add a kitchen. Also great. So the project description is also really important if you're looking to legalize an existing unit. So just please say that in your project description. If you have a summer kitchen in your basement and you want to turn your basement into an additional dwelling unit, also say that in your application. Because if you have an existing unit, we do need to verify that there's a record of that unit. Before 1994, there's some rules around that, so it's just really helpful to us if you include that information in the project description. Some other really useful hints here too are to make sure that you apply to all of the grants. So you can select yes for the planning and building permit fees grant and the servicing grant in the same application. Just do that. It's kind of a better to have and not need than need and not have kind of situation. So all grants will require a building permit, so approved applications can get some help there. But if your water and sewer services do need to be upgraded as a part of your project, that can be expensive. So having that grant available if you need it can really be helpful for that project. And we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it's worth mentioning again. I really want to understand the number of new units and the bedroom counts. So only new units are eligible. So if you have a single detached home and you want to add a 2-bedroom basement apartment, you have created one new unit because your existing house is already counted as a unit. So the number of bedrooms doesn't impact the number of units. Like a 2-bedroom unit is still a single unit. So just pay special attention to that part while you're filling out the application. And if you're doing more for energy efficiency or accessibility, just please describe what that is in the box. There's a text box that you can type in. So some applications will say yes to the energy efficiency or accessibility being above the building code, but they won't tell us how they're actually doing it. So this is just a statistics question, like a self-reporting thing, but it's still really good to know what people are doing to improve energy efficiency and accessibility in their project. There's no like extra money involved here. We just want to see how it's being considered in the build. So the goal here is to make sure that you're submitting a complete application, meaning that you have all the stuff that we need to finish your review. So now you've submitted the application. So after you've submitted that application, just hang tight. Applications are being accepted in this window until the 17th of April. At that point, we'll begin to review all the applications that have been received. We review for completeness and do verifications on our end. And if we end up needing more information from you, we'll be in touch. Now, this process can take up to 6 weeks, depending on the number of applications that we received. And funding is limited. So if your application does not have all of the required information and we have to get back to you, it's possible that completed applications will be approved in the meantime and you might miss out on funding. This is why we want you to be sure that you've included everything you need when you submit your application the first time. It's also really important to mention here that if your project is depending on the funding to move forward, that you do not start work on this project before you hear back about whether your application has been approved or not. So 2025 building permits and 2025 expenses will not disqualify your application. But if your application is not approved, then you will not be reimbursed for any of those costs. So it comes down to a risk management part on you, the applicant. So if you're depending on this funding, then the wisest course of action is for you to hang tight and wait to hear if your application was approved or not before you start work. So let's assume that your application is complete and is approved. So once this happens, you'll get an automated email that tells you that your project has been provisionally approved. Provisionally approved means that your application is approved if you satisfy a condition within a certain amount of time. So in this case, it means that your application is approved if you apply for your building permit within 60 days. So this is where phase 3 starts, and that's getting your project ready. Like I just mentioned, once you have your approval, you have 60 days to apply for a building permit or you risk losing your funding. So we've created a relatively easy to follow how to build an ADU guide that could be a great resource for you in this process, as it gives you a high level roadmap of what you need to do to get that permit and prepare for construction. And this is where the homework that you did earlier pays off, because you need to get your ducks in a row before applying for that building permit. And the biggest part of that is going to be the design drawing. So building services, our building services team has a list of qualified designers that you can use to collect quotes. And this is probably a good thing to do like after you've submitted your application, so you can see what your costs are going to be. Like, contact a couple of the designers on that list, get some quotes, and you can kind of add a little bit more certainty to your application once you understand what the design process looks like and what the timelines would be to actually get a design drawing. So once you have your design drawing in place, you can actually apply for your building permit. So you need the design drawing to apply for your building permit. And once you've successfully applied for that building permit, the next step is to sign the financial agreement. And the financial agreement is basically the contract between the person who's doing the project and the city. And it's important to note here that in the financial agreement, you'll see three different values, and it's one line for each of the grants. So each grant is its own grant. So if you're approved for up to the maximum amount of money for each of those grants, that's the maximum that you can get for each of those grants. It's not a total amount of money. You can't carry the money between the grants. So if you're approved for the maximum $10,000 planning and building permit fees, but you only spend $1,000, you can't take the other $9,000 and apply it to other parts of your project. They're each independent of each other. So once that agreement is executed, meaning that everybody has signed it, the next phase is to actually do your building. So you've now got this financial agreement executed, everyone signed it, everyone's seen it. Like, let's build Thunder Bay. So you're going to want to make sure that you're keeping all of your paid invoices and receipts for the work that you're doing on the project. And that's really important once you're done the work. So you're able to submit those in this same application portal. And you can even do that piecemeal, like as work starts getting done, you can scan those documents, or if they're electronic, you can just attach them right into that same portal as you submitted the application through. And after your construction is done, the last phase is to close off the grant and get your reimbursement. So once you get your final inspection done from building services and your building permit gets closed off, you've officially reached the end of your construction. And now you're the owner of a brand new unit. So congratulations on that. Now you can begin to submit these paid invoices if you haven't been putting them in the portal already. The next step that we have to do is collect all of the receipts and paid invoices, add them up against your final grant values, and that's going to determine what the actual final paid grant value is for each one. So it's really important that you keep those receipts and that you upload them accurately. And then there's going to be a couple of other administrative things that you're going to have to do. So collecting the electronic transfer information is going to be an important form that you'll be filling out as part of this process as well. And this is how we organize payment. So there's no more waiting for a check. And if you have any questions or experience any issues during this process, just contact us at that buildthunderbay@buildthunderbay.ca email address. And yeah, so that's how you build an ADU and get funding through the Additional Dwelling Unit Grants Program. If you have any questions, again, just submit them through buildthunderbay@thunderbay.ca, and we're looking forward to seeing your applications. Thank you very much, and good luck to everyone.